Seeing the clear crystal guarded by the rabbit monsters, Hyujin was surprised that it appeared so quickly. He guessed it seemed like it was set to appear after a certain number of monsters were killed. Not many dungeons were this easy. He understood how she could cleared it alone in the previous timeline. Seeing Hyujin, who suddenly fell silent while staring in a direction, Yanseo then asked if there was something there. Hearing that, Hyujin replied no, it was not important now, they should focus on killing all the rabbits first. Although Hyujin had gotten the ring, but he needed more. The ring was the only equipment that could be stacked. He still had 9 other fingers, so he couldn't stop yet. It might take a few hours, but it didn't matter. The goal was to collect them all. While Yanseo was killing the rabbit monsters, she was also watching Hyujin. She was surprised to see him kill the monsters quickly. With how knowledgeable he was about this gate, she guessed it seemed like Hyujin had been to this gate before. She also wondered who he really was, and when a rabbit monster jumped and was about to attack towards her, Yanseo was able to quickly react and kill the rabbit using one slash of her sword, but she was then surprised when the system notification appeared. There was no respawn left, the monster would not come back to life. She thought they could get out of here if they killed all the rabbit monsters, so they had been here for hours slaughtering the rabbits, but her guess seemed to be wrong. She then asked how they got out now. While Yanseo was confused about how to get out of there, Hyujin then invited her to go, and said the exit was through here. Yanseo was then surprised to hear that. And as she followed Hyujin, she complained that the place was very dark. She asked if he could see anything there. She also asked where the exit was, but she was then surprised, when she saw the clear crystal that had been destroyed in front of them. After the clear crystal was forcibly destroyed by Hyujin, the flash gate was automatically cleared. Hyujin smiled at that. He thought this was more than enough. Unlike the dungeon, the gate could not be entered again after it was closed, but he had collected 8 HP absorption rings. He felt he had made the right decision to farm until the spawn limit, while Xenia herself looked very unhappy after seeing all his actions during the gate. Hyujin guessed the guardians must have made a scene, and sure enough, the guardians then expressed their boredom, even to the point that some stopped observing. Hyujin was not surprised when he saw that. Seeing them farm for several hours was boring. But he couldn't believe they acted like that even though they knew the importance of the item, and they then came out of the gate. It took longer than he thought. Although he told Ah Hyung that he would walk home, but he wondered if he should also think about what he would say to his older sister, but Hyujin then seemed to have a surprised expression. Yanseo was the same. She was confused if this was the same place as where they were before entering the gate. Something was different. There was no one there besides them. Facing this situation, Hyujin also had a guess. In the midst of their shock, Hyujin then saw Roa, who was thanking the guardians for coming to her channel. A guardian named the True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain had just requested the establishment of a PvP zone. Therefore, from now on, she hereby announced the opening of the PvP zone. When he saw Roa, Hyujin also recognized her. He also knew that she was streamer Shin Yanseo. She was an intermediate administrator like Xenia, but she was a fairy. Roa then continued. These two players have attracted a lot of attention lately. On the one hand, we have a genius swordsman who attracts the attention of the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain. On the other hand, we have a player with extraordinary knowledge and intuition, then who will come out victorious in the duel. Since this is a PvP zone, they will not die, and all damage received will be removed after the PvP ends. Yanseo was then dumbfounded to hear that. Hyujin too. Roa then invited the guardians to choose the player they thought could win. Seeing her, Hyujin pondered for a moment. Roa has a talent for handling guardians. This is one of the reasons why she was able to become one of the most popular intermediate administrators at that time. She is the opposite of someone who is very lacking in terms of speaking skills. There is no need to explain who the person Hyujin is referring to. Xenia now can only be silent to see Roa, who is so good at comforting the guardians. Yanseo then hesitantly said that she honestly didn't know why things had become like this. She also asked if it was true that they wouldn't die here. Hearing her question, Hyujin explained, even in the worst case scenario, you will not die in the PvP zone. As she had just heard, all wounds will heal when the PvP ends. To be honest, he was a little surprised. He didn't expect he would see a PvP zone without a guardian by his side. Several guardians expressed their surprise at his words. Xenia was also surprised to hear that. Roa was the same. She then wondered if he might know about the guardian selection. She also became once again suspicious of Xenia if she really did not tell him, but she then decided not to care too much. After all, it was none of her business. Without further ado, Roa then announced the start of the PvP. He also invited the Guardians to cheer for the victory of their chosen player, but Hyujin suddenly asked her to wait a minute. There was something he wanted to say before they started. Hearing that, Roa then asked what it was. Hyujin said that he wanted to convey something to the Guardian she mentioned earlier, the Guardian who asked for this PvP to be held, the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain. He then asked if this Guardian was someone who promoted betrayal, seeing as they unfairly asked him to betray someone he entrusted in battle. After saying that, Hyujin pondered for a moment. As can be seen from his name, the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain, he blatantly revealed his identity as the master of 1,000,000 followers, he who stands at the top, the heavenly demon. In the previous timeline, he was also famous as Shin Yanseo's guardian. Regarding his personality, he is a warlike person who is on the level of the courageous Lion King. His courage comes from him seeing himself as a warrior, but he does not only control courage, he is a warrior who hates betrayal of trust and who opposes injustice and cowardice. Besides, he is very proud, so he will definitely respond, while Roa herself is now panicking when she hears his words. Shortly after that, Hyujin then gets a system notification. The true master of the heavenly demonic mountain wants to give him a temporary skill. He has been given a temporary skill, single hit finisher. Temporary skills can only be used in the PvP zone. Seeing that, Hyujin was not surprised, because this was also what he planned. Yanseo was then surprised and asked if he also had it. Hyujin didn't answer right away and thought, from this arrogant warrior's point of view, Shin Yanseo, who he had given a single hit finisher to first, was stronger. Honestly, Hyujin wasn't sure he could win either. In his eyes, he was just a weakling who didn't have a single hit finisher. Of course, such an arrogant warrior would be confident that a warrior he didn't personally teach was weaker. Hearing Yanseo's question, Hyujin confirmed it, but this was only temporary. He also said that he didn't expect them to fight each other after clearing the gate together. Since he even gave him a skill, he felt that he was quite curious about who would win. Yanseo was silent for a moment hearing that. She then said that she was too. Hyujin was confused hearing that. Yanseo said that she was also curious about who would win. She then took out her sword and said that he was the one who had given her this sword a few hours ago. He also said that she was better at holding it because he thought she could use it better. From what she saw, he was quite extraordinary. He caught the rabbit monsters with almost the same speed as her. Not only that, he also knew a lot about the gate. He knew what to do inside, and he even knew how to get out. As if he could see in the dark, whether he already knew everything, or whether it was because he could really see it. Either way, she began to wonder how she would match him if they fought for real. Since they had the same skills now, she then invited him to fight just once. Hearing that, Hyujin then accepted her invitation. He also thought that Yanseo had really found the right guardian. Hyujin then set up his attacking stance, and said he could see for herself if she was so curious, and the guardians became very enthusiastic about it, and urged the two of them to start immediately. After positioning her sword correctly, Yanseo then immediately rushed to attack. Hyujin did not look scared at all, and was able to swiftly greet her attack. When their attacks clashed, Hyujin then activated the Eye of Perception. After the clash of their attacks ended, Yanseo then took a step back and took a stance. Seeing that, Hyujin knew that she would attack from the left, and sure enough, Yanseo then attacked him from the left. But it could certainly be easily parried by Hyujin because he had anticipated it. After successfully parrying her attack, Hyujin then returned to estimate her next attack, which would come from above to his side, or maybe she deliberately made it look like that, but Hyujin was sure that she would really aim for his neck. Seeing the clash between the two of them, Roa was surprised and wondered if they really saw this kind of PvP at this level. Roa's surprise was quite justified, seeing their clash that was so fierce even though it was still at a fairly low level. Thanks to the Eye of Perception, Hyujin knew where she would attack him first, but he couldn't see the opportunity to counterattack. In terms of swordsmanship, he had already failed in terms of technique, and when Yanseo attacked him again, Hyujin didn't look panicked and could easily parry her attack. He also seemed to smile slightly because he had thought of a way to defeat her, and as their clash continued, Hyujin suddenly took the initiative to retreat. Yanseo was silent for a moment seeing that. She then asked if he had never studied swordsmanship. Did he just have a good sense for it? In any case, from now on, she would be serious too. Hyujin was then surprised to hear that, and asked if she wasn't serious from before. Then what was she doing until now? Yanseo then replied that she was holding back just a little bit. Even if he didn't die, being stabbed hurt, right? Seeing her back on the attack horse, Hyujin thought it seemed like she had measured his ability now. To her, it probably seemed like their physical abilities were on the same level. What mattered now was her timing with the single-hit finisher, and when Hyujin was about to parry her attack back as usual, his waist suddenly got cut, and blood came out from the cut arena. Hyujin looked surprised when he saw that. Not wasting it, Yanseo then quickly attacked him again. Seeing her attack coming, Hyujin suddenly moved so fast that he disappeared from where he was, and when Yanseo's attack finally came, she was suddenly surprised because instead of hitting Hyujin, her attack hit a tree and made her sword stuck. Seeing Hyujin who was already behind her, she then wondered if he was hiding his speed, but without having time to think further, Hyujin then attacked her using a single-hit finisher. Yanseo could only be surprised at the speed of his sword that was so fast, and when she was worried that the sword was about to cut off her head, the sword suddenly stopped. Seeing that, Yanseo's body could only limply fall to the ground. Hyujin then declared that he won. Yanseo seemed to feel embarrassed for losing, but she later admitted that he was the winner. After Yanseo admitted defeat, a system notification then appeared, and stated that he had won the first PvP zone. Hearing that he was the winner of the first PvP, he was quite surprised because the PvP zone appeared later than he thought. The system notification then reappeared. He had received the title First Adversary. The title given to the player who wins the first battle between players. The adversary has a very favorable position in the battle against other players. He gets an additional attack speed of 7%, as well as an additional movement speed of 4%, and can also use Flash Step while the title is in effect. Hyujin was shocked when he read that. Flash Step is a skill that allows players to jump forward instantly before their opponents even realize it, a powerful lightweight technique that does not demand the use of mana. There were wild speculations about how the Sword Empress got the Flash Step, but it turned out that it was because she was the winner of the first PvP zone in the previous timeline. Seeing him thinking so hard, Yanseo then asked what he was thinking. He had already won, so he should be standing tall with pride. To be honest, she was so surprised that she called her mother for the first time since she was in elementary school. She guessed that if Mistress Han Myungi saw her now, she would definitely be surprised. While Hyujin himself was now still struggling with his thoughts. On the one hand, you could see this as him stealing the Sword Empress ability. But it was unintentional and he won, so there is nothing to regret. Besides, the Guardians looked surprised to see that he had won. It seemed that the four Guardians were really watching their duel with great interest. They were probably trying to make an impression because he knew about the selection. Seeing the courageous Lion King who mocked his little trick during the duel earlier, he couldn't help but think, this guy really stuck to his guns to hate him, but he was also confused why he kept entering this channel. Shortly after that, the PvP zone was then deactivated. Seeing that, Yanseo then asked if it was really over now. Hyujin also saw that the wound he got in PvP had healed, while taking out her phone. Yanseo then said that they shouldn't just separate. She asked him to put his number here. She would tell him her number too. Hearing that, Hyujin asked why. Yanseo invited him to make another party later, not a party for drinking, but a system party. She also immediately admitted that she already loved him. Hearing that, Hyujin just lamented that she was very straightforward, and he then saved her number. But the eye of perception suddenly detected danger. Hyujin could only be silent knowing that, and when a slap was about to hit his back, he thought that he could not avoid it. He then could only surrender and accept the slap. Yanseo could only be surprised to see that the slap turned out to be from Ah Hyung, who was nowhere near him. She then angrily cursed at him. She was angry because Hyujin kept going somewhere without saying a word. He disappeared suddenly, and she had been looking for him for hours but couldn't find him. She even asked if he was alive or dead. Seeing her angry, Yanseo then asked who she was. Hyujin replied, she was his older sister. After that, Hyujin and Ah Hyung then went home together, and not long after, they then arrived home, seeing the room he had lived in for a long time. Hyujin could only sigh and think like they would leave this place soon. It took about 3 days to pack up their belongings. Their family would finally be able to live in a place with better conditions. They didn't seem to believe it even after he showed the letter, but it was only a matter of time. If there was one thing that had definitely changed at this time, it was their family's future, however. The rest of the future that he knew went almost the same as before, in the previous timeline. The catastrophe began worldwide on May 11, 2018. More than 20 million people died worldwide due to the tutorial incident that appeared. On the one hand, the global conglomerate company, Sungshin, named new tech for objects and goods related to players, and announced that they would put all their efforts into businesses related to new tech. Up to this point, this was exactly the same as what he wrote in his summary notes. If everything continued to flow towards a predetermined future, then on June 16, in 3 days from now, dungeons and gates would appear simultaneously across the country. He might know the future. But he couldn't solve everything. He wasn't a hero or a saint. If there's one thing he can do as an ordinary player, it's just to keep playing every day. After reading the summary he wrote regarding the murder incident on Mount Inwang that happened today, Hyujin then decided what he would do today, and he then traveled to Mount Inwang. After climbing the mountain for a while, Manhwa, who was invited by Hyujin, then asked why they came here. Hyujin replied, they were here to catch monsters that should be around here. Manhwa was quite surprised to hear that, and asked if it was a slime-like monster. Hyujin replied no, slimes are a bit weak to be considered as monsters now. Manhwa also agreed with that. She then asked again if there was something else here. Hyujin confirmed it. There was a lycanthrope here. Manhwa was then shocked and felt horrified to hear that. Somewhere in Mount Inwang, there was a group of hikers talking about the events like in Jongno district that had happened all over the world. They thought it was really scary, which made them not even want to think about it. They also wondered what exactly was going on, heard that the monsters, called intermediate administrators, had killed people arbitrarily, but the police could not do anything. Even bullets did not work on that creatures. A middle-aged woman in the group was then surprised when she saw a monster nearby. It was a slime. The middle-aged woman also knew that it was harmless, so she then asked if they should try to catch it and sell it, but someone in the group immediately rejected the idea of the middle-aged woman. If it was that easy, did she think Sungshin would give money to a group of people called players? The middle-aged woman then realized that, new tech or whatever it was, there must be a reason why the price was so expensive. She had lived for 50 years. But this was the first time she had seen the world change so much. Someone who was at the front of the group suddenly stopped. They were then puzzled at that. She then asked if there was something that passed over their heads just now. Hearing that, the middle-aged woman said that she didn't see anything. She was confused about what she meant by something passing over them. But they were then surprised when they saw someone moving so fast towards them. That person was Hyujin. He also saw them. 3 women in their 50s, halfway up the mountain. Based on that, Hyujin guessed that they must be victims of the incident. Seeing Hyujin approaching, the middle-aged woman then panicked and was about to call the police. Seeing that, Hyujin then tried to calm her down. It would be dangerous if she screamed. Any sound could provoke it, so he told her to stay calm. But Hyujin's words seemed to have no effect on them at all. They then immediately became rowdy and tried to call the police. They also invited the middle-aged woman who was silent to run. They considered Hyujin a dangerous person because they saw him carrying a knife. But before the middle-aged woman could run with her friends, she suddenly felt something. A monster with a werewolf-like shape was already nearby. It was a lycanthrope that had level 24. They were then shocked when they saw it. They then decided to run. But they were then worried when they saw the lycanthrope approaching the middle-aged woman. She also panicked when she saw it. But she was then surprised and confused when Hyujin suddenly put his hand on her shoulder. He had followed the bloodlust he had felt since they arrived on the mountain, and as expected, this creature appeared, and this would be his first time fighting against it without any tricks. But he didn't seem afraid at all. But he also felt doubtful. The bloodlust came from more than one source. It felt like there was something far greater than a lycanthrope out there. He then wondered where it was. But Hyujin then inevitably ended his thoughts when he saw the lycanthrope rushing to attack him. And as he observed it, he was then surprised, as he saw a faint silhouette behind the lycanthrope. As the lycanthrope's attack arrived, Hyujin then immediately ducked to avoid it. He then stepped forward, and finally could clearly see what the creature was. Seeing that, he thought of killing it now. Hyujin then activated the first adversary title and used the flash step skill. His movements then turned so fast that it created an afterimage behind him. When he was near the creature, Hyujin then replaced the first adversary title with the excellent player title. He got additional damage and movement speed as a result of that. He could now also use the excellent strike skill, which he then used to attack the creature. His attack managed to penetrate quite deeply into the monster's body. The monster was a six-tailed fox that had level 27. Seeing that, Hyujin was then surprised that such a monster had appeared. After being hit by Hyujin's attack, the fox then decided to retreat. Seeing it go away, Hyujin did not pursue it and pondered for a moment. The six-tailed fox is a difficult monster that belongs to the spirit-type category. The monster is proficient in stealth and ambushes. This tricky enemy is even capable of using a little spirit magic. Not that he didn't know what kind of monster this was, but he was confused as to why it appeared now. While Hyujin was facing the six-tailed fox, suddenly there was a scream from one of the middle-aged women mountain climbers. The middle-aged woman screamed in pain after her arm was cut off by the lycanthrope. After successfully landing its attack on the middle-aged woman, the lycanthrope then prepared to attack her again. But its attention then suddenly seemed to be pulled by something. It was the taunt skill used by Manhwa. The lycanthrope was then provoked after Manhwa used taunt on her. This was not the first time she faced this monster, but that time, Hyujin faced it alone. Manhwa then thought hard. What would Hyujin do if it was him? The lycanthrope then howled loudly. Seeing that, Manhwa realized that it was the howl that defeated her last time. Her whole body trembled until she couldn't do anything but hide. But now it was different. The negative effects of the lycanthrope's howl now really had no effect on her. Manhwa was determined. This time, she would kill it, and when the lycanthrope rushed and attacked towards her, Manhwa was then able to swiftly block it using the platinum shield. Realizing that she was able to withstand its attack, Manhwa then thought that she could deal with it. She also thought Hyujin must have known that she could handle its attack. All she had to do now was to hold it back. Manhwa then gripped the lycanthrope's arm that was extended to her, then held it firmly. She was determined not to let go. While Manhwa was holding the lycanthrope was suddenly hit by an attack that made it scream in pain. The attack turned out to be from Hyujin, who was quickly heading towards them after his fight was over against the six-tailed fox. But Hyujin's attack did not stop there. He then firmly thrust his sword into the lycanthrope's head until it made the sword penetrate backwards. The lycanthrope could only stand stiffly after being hit by the fatal attack. Not wasting the opportunity, Hyujin then called Manhwa. Manhwa immediately understood what he meant. She then sent a fist to the lycanthrope's stomach. The lycanthrope was then thrown away after being surprised by the powerful attack, and a system notification then appeared shortly after. The lycanthrope had been killed. Seeing that, Hyujin couldn't help but think, the predator of the tutorial zone, the hidden part and the wolf king, the lycanthrope. Killing it turned out to be easier than he thought. If there was no six-tailed fox here, killing it would definitely be faster. After Hyujin pulled out his sword that was stuck in the lycanthrope's head, he was then surprised when he looked at the middle-aged women mountaineers. They frightenedly told him not to come close and called him a monster. Hyujin could only be silent seeing that. He also regretted a little because there were victims due to the unexpected six-tailed fox. While looking at the corpse of the middle-aged woman who died horribly with one of her hands cut off, Hyujin then walked towards her. He then could only pray for her after seeing it. While looking up at the sky, he then thought, the murder case on Mount Inwang. What the government announced at that time was that they succeeded in destroying the lycanthrope that caused the incident, but they failed to find the real culprit, the six-tailed fox, and failed to kill it. Spirit-type monsters would be difficult to kill with the current level of technology. So they hurriedly announced their success. The six-tailed fox was the epitome of a clever and cunning fox who was skilled at escaping, but he was injured. So there was no way he could run very far. Amidst his struggling thoughts, Hyujin suddenly felt something. One of the middle-aged women suddenly fell down while feeling scared, because she saw the six-tailed fox in front of her. She then could only shout for help. Hearing that, Hyujin then got ready again, and was about to rush towards the direction of the voice. The fox needs to eat humans to heal the wounds he caused, especially the innards. The fox also seemed to realize that he was rushing towards it, and without further ado, Hyujin then immediately sent a strong slash towards it. But the slash was unfortunately successfully avoided by the fox. Seeing the wounds on the middle-aged woman caused by the fox, Hyujin realized that the fox attacked her to recover. It was clear from the wound on her stomach that it was trying to eat her guts. but it didn't have enough time to eat them, at least that's what he thought. Hyujin then tightened the grip of his sword, and mounted an attacking stance. The one in front of him at the moment was the doppelganger it created. If this one was the real body, it would have eaten the climber without wasting time. Realizing that, Hyujin then wondered, where was the fox's real body? After Hyujin observed for a while, he then came to a conclusion. Its real body was near the treetops at 11 o'clock. It hid itself with camouflage and looked this way. Hyujin was sure that it must not be aware that he had marked its location with the eye of perception. If it knew, it would have run away. To catch its real body, he had to act as if he didn't know anything. Hyujin then told Manhwa to use taunt on the doppelganger. Manhwa understood. She then immediately used taunt on the doppelganger. When Manhwa used taunt on it, the doppelganger seemed to feel provoked, but Manhwa was surprised, because the doppelganger was not fully taunted. Hyujin also realized that. He then calmed Manhwa and told her to continue. Don't stop until she managed to pull its aggro. He promised to definitely take it down, so he told Manhwa to trust him and do it. Hearing that, Manhwa then used taunt again on the doppelganger. The doppelganger once no longer felt provoked after Manhwa used taunt on it. It then immediately rushed forward to pounce on Manhwa. By opening its mouth wide, it then bit Manhwa's hand. The doppelganger had level 22, but because this clone was not an illusion but a physical duplicate that was separated from its original body, so its stats were divided between the two separate bodies. The weakened six-tailed fox clone could not penetrate Manhwa's defenses. If killing this clone would end everything, then he could directly eliminate it. But it would only be in vain because its original body would feel threatened and run away. Hyujin then opened the item shop, and bought a beginner's dagger for 260 coins. By installing a throwing motion, Hyujin thought this was the only answer. By aiming his gaze at the real body of the six-tailed fox, and attacking it directly with a dagger throw, and Hyujin then threw the dagger with all his might. Some guardians were interested in the action, and some even sneered at the action, but Hyujin certainly didn't have time to respond to these people, and when the six-tailed fox saw the dagger he threw heading towards it, it then could only feel shocked and desperate. Until finally the dagger hit it, which made the fox thrown far back, and Manhwa, who was fighting the doppelganger, then was surprised when she saw the doppelganger suddenly disappear. Seeing that, Manhwa confusedly wondered if Hyujin was doing something. Actually, she felt she heard a swishing sound like an arrow being shot. Somewhere deep in the forest near where the two of them were, the six-tailed fox was seen lying limp with a dagger stuck right in the middle of its chest. After Hyujin threw the dagger, he then immediately headed to the location. Seeing the fox, who could only lie helpless, Hyujin then finished by thrusting his sword at it, and the fox then died. The guardians were pleased and flabbergasted at all his action. Hyujin was then a little surprised when he saw the item drop appear. He got a fox tail. He did think there might be a chance for the item drop to appear because it was a six-tailed fox, but he did not expect this item to actually come out. He must be able to make good use of it in the dungeon shot table that will appear later. Amidst the appearance of a system notification informing him that he has leveled up to level 26, Hyujin then looked up. A helicopter was seen observing the mountain where they were. Hearing the roar of the helicopter engine, Hyujin then asked if anyone had called the police. If they were involved for no apparent reason, they could add to the problem, so he then decided to leave immediately. But right before Hyujin was about to leave, Senia suddenly appeared and asked, "How many levels?" Hearing that, Hyujin couldn't help but think that she was used to asking things spontaneously. He didn't answer Senia's question right away and just told her to scan him. Senia was silent for a moment. Hearing that, she then said, "Level 26. Hyujin was a little surprised to hear that. He also saw her wings that were vibrating again, which indicated that she was restless. Hyujin then became alert. When the surrounding environment suddenly changed, a pause had taken effect. Senia then explained, the Lady of the Scales had given a pause. In addition, there was a notification from another guardian, asking him to review their proposal. Right after Senia said that, many system screens then appeared in front of Hyujin. It was the proposals from the guardians that began to arrive. First, the message sent by the courageous Lion King. He was also confused why this jerk suddenly liked him. He gave him 3 high-strength elixirs. Next, the Lady of the Scales and the Whispering Devil. These two guardians with completely opposite dispositions offered early equipment from Jo Sunghyun the Typhoon, a rare class weapon that is rarely owned in the early days of the game, the Aten Sword, and an item that increases player growth in exchange for turning their alignment into evil. namely the devil fruit. Both are items that will turn any player into a ranker if obtained now. Lastly, an interesting offer from the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain. He gave him the heavenly demon art to him. Seeing that, Hyujin didn't expect him to give the heavenly demon art. His idea to give a gift was crazy. As for the nameless observer himself, he hasn't offered anything, other than observing him since the tutorial. He has not shown any overt movement, but until now, many other guardians have made meaningful proposals. Of course, there is one explanation for this situation. They are all trying to force him to choose them when he reaches level 30. They want to show that they are capable of giving gifts like this, and authority is like a pause, so that is why Xenia is trembling like that. Xenia probably wants to tell him that it is time for the first advancement when he reaches level 25. After all, she knows very well that guardians will make a step forward. If they knew that the player they were supervising was approaching level 30, she might be currently having problems, such as why didn't you announce his level earlier, and so on. They wouldn't stop even if she used the order prohibiting involvement in the player's game as an excuse. That is, even if she wanted to say something, this girl would not be able to string two words into a sentence. Realizing that, Hyujin then called her and said, he had a general idea of what happened. He then confirmed whether she was in a difficult situation because of the announcement. Xenia was silent for a moment hearing that, but she then said that she didn't know what he was talking about. Hearing that, Hyujin then said that he was sure she knew. Xenia could only be silent hearing that. Hyujin continued, she must have seen the proposal he had gotten. She wouldn't be able to do her job well if she got rid of the guardians at the same time. Hearing that, Xenia then asked who he was and what he wanted. Hyujin answered, 3,000 coins. Hearing his answer, Xenia bid, how about 2,000 coins, but Hyujin only asked if she could negotiate right now. He heard that the guardians could get angry. If she could handle it herself, he just let her. Hearing that, Xenia again bargained, how about 2,700 coins, but Hyujin did not accept bargaining at all. He only asked for 3,000 coins because they were in the same position. If she refused because she had a problem with the price he set based on their partnership, he would gladly mention the price he would give. But before Hyujin could finish his sentence, Xenia did not return to bargaining and immediately agreed. She also asked him not to ask for more than that. Right after that, the pause then ended. Hyujin then asked her to give him the contract. He would sign it. When the time showed afternoon, Hyujin and Manhwa then returned home after successfully resolving all the problems that occurred in Mount Inwang. While Hyujin was waiting for the car he was riding to get home, he was then surprised by the sudden sound of vibration from his phone because someone called. And when he picked up the phone, the caller then introduced herself, who turned out to be Yanseo. Hearing that, Hyujin then asked the reason why she suddenly called him. Yanseo said that she had read the article. She also asked that it was him, the one who killed the monster on Mount Inwang. She then suddenly thanked him. She just wanted to say thank you. Her mother, if it wasn't for him, she might be gone today. Yanseo's mother turned out to be one of the middle-aged women mountain climbers rescued by Hyujin. Yanseo said this was all thanks to her. She would never forget this. She also promised to do whatever he asked. She could serve him very well. Hearing the word serve spoken by Yanseo, Hyujin could only laugh. He also wondered if she was using that word without knowing what it meant. He then said he would call her. He has something to ask. Hearing that, Yanseo enthusiastically asked what it was. Hyujin said he had to go somewhere for a few days and wanted to ask if she wanted to come with him. With a feeling of excitement, Yanseo asked if it was some kind of vacation. Where? Hearing her question, Hyujin just answered, a little far away. The next day, at Hyujin's new house, he called So Yu-hyun and Shin Yanseo and told them his plan. They were then surprised to hear that, and asked if he was really going to take them on vacation with him to Japan tomorrow. Hyujin denied that. This was not a vacation, but a raid. More specifically, he invited them to complete the gate that would appear in Osaka. Hearing that, Yanseo then asked if he meant it was like the place they had just hunted for 5 hours non-stop after entering last time. Hyujin confirmed that, although no one knows if it will be the same. Usually you have to go inside the gate to know what's inside. All they can know is that all gates are capable of breaking. Other countries have prepared for tutorials and the appearance of gates as soon as they heard the news about the catastrophe in Korea, but no matter how well you prepare, the sudden appearance of a dungeon or gates can cause the death of hundreds or thousands of people. For the gate he is aiming for, as far as he knows, the gate will open very quickly. He is not sure that it can be cleared within the time limit. after it breaks. The monsters that come out of the gate will attack humans, and there will be about 100 casualties, including awakened. If the right raid team goes there at the right time, they might be able to minimize casualties, like the incident on Mount Inwang yesterday. Hyujin also said that this is an offer that they can refuse if they don't want to go. They are not there to play, so he can't just invite them to come, but if they want to come, he will cover everything, from flight tickets to travel expenses. They just need to bring their clothes and passports to the airport tomorrow. Hearing that, Yanseo actually felt a little disappointed that he called her because of work. She should have expected it last night when he asked her to come on vacation with him. Hearing that, Hyujin then reiterated that this was not a vacation, but a raid. And when did he ever mention vacation? Yanseo did not answer and told him to tell her. How did he know something like this would happen? Hearing that, Hyujin then replied, it was because of precognitive dreams. He could foresee important events that would appear during play in his dreams. He had never revealed it because he thought hiding it would be the most advantageous move, but Yanseo still seemed to look doubtful hearing his reasoning. But Hyujin then just said that anything could happen, be it gates, dungeons, or monsters that appeared in them, in this world where things that never existed before kept appearing. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that there were things like precognitive dreams. Hyujin told them that it was up to them whether they believed him or not, but whether they believed him or not, he was sure of what he saw, so he would go to Japan. Even if he had to go alone. Hearing that, Yanseo then asked if he was sure to go. She also looked at Hyujin, who looked very serious, although she could fail the class if she continued to skip classes, but she then decided not to care too much, and agreed to Hyujin's invitation. She would take this as a date and go with him. As for Yu-hyun himself, he said that he would go wherever he went. He already owed him his life once, so how could he not go with him wherever it was? Hearing them both agree, Sunhwa then asked what about her. Hearing that, Hyujin then said he would take care of her flight procedures. If she didn't want to go, he told her to tell him. Sunhwa then was happy to hear that and said that she wanted to go. She had never been on a plane in her life. Hearing her agree, Hyujin then said that he would assume she was coming. Seeing the three of them who were busy thinking about their trip tomorrow, Hyujin couldn't help but think. He honestly thought at least one of them would refuse. This is really unexpected. With this party, he doesn't have to worry about the lack of fighting power, the future Fist King, the Sword Empress, plus a tank who seems to have more talent than them. This is probably the strongest team that can be expected as a beginner. Tomorrow, they will go to Osaka. The next day, they then went to the airport. There was an announcement from the airport to the passengers of the plane, that this is a flight to Kansai International Airport. Please wear your seatbelts and switch your electronic devices to plane mode. We ask you to pay attention to the safety of the cabin and hope you will have a comfortable flight with us. Along with the announcement of the plane, Hyujin's group was seen already in the plane. Sunhwa also looked very amazed because it was her first time on a plane. She then asked if this thing could fly. Yanseo then laughed at that. She then replied, this is an airplane, of course it can fly. She also said to Sunhwa if she didn't quickly put on the seatbelt, she would be thrown and fly. Sunhwa was then shocked to hear that. Yanseo then showed her how to wear a seatbelt. Hyujin also saw the interaction between the two of them. He also thought, it sounds like they can get there safely, but there is another problem. He doesn't know exactly when the gate they are heading to will open. All he knows is that a few moments before the gate opens, a tutorial with a 33% survival rate, the Tokyo tutorial, will start. The beginner gate that appears shortly after the start of the tutorial will only contain weak monsters. Sometimes there will be very strong monsters. But that's just a special case, considering that a gate break happens in Japan directly after they get players awakened through massive sacrifices. It would be difficult to clear it in time because it appeared so close to the tutorial, or because the special case actually happened, that is, the appearance of very strong monsters. He didn't know which one was true until he saw it for himself. What they could do was go to Osaka before the estimated time, and spend about a week touring the area. Sunhwa suddenly said to him, she knew it was a bit late to say this. But was it okay if they were gone for so long, as he knew how happy they were when they moved into the new house, seeing the luxurious house that would be their home from now on. Ah-hyung then suspiciously asked him, what was she doing? Her older sister was looking at him suspiciously, but Hyujin knew that she was always like this. She acted like she was unhappy even when she was happy, but in reality everyone was really happy. Hearing that, Manhwa said it would be better if it was true. She then decided to believe him because he said it, seeing Manhwa's state that turned into relief, happiness, and trust. Hyujin then smiled slightly. After some time, the airplane announcement then sounded again. Dear guests, our plane is about to land. Please check if your seatbelts are fastened properly. Please check if your cell phones and other electronic devices are in airplane mode. After they got out of the plane, they then went straight to the Osaka area, more precisely the Dotonbori area. Hyujin invited them to take a walk there, the main street in Osaka. Here will appear a gate. At first, the gate will not be successfully completed, it will break, and monsters will come out. If possible, he wants to find the gate as soon as it appears and clean it up, but even if they fail to find it, they will kill the monsters that appear before they make a mess. He really wants to find it quickly and clean it up, but who knows how many days it will take. But he was then surprised when a gate suddenly appeared in front of him, but instead of monsters coming out, it came out Senia. They also looked fascinated when they saw her. Yu Hyun then asked Hyujin who she was. Ignoring their reactions, Senia then said, the first thing she would tell them. They were the only people who could see her. If they wanted to avoid the commotion, she told them to be quiet and let Hyujin speak. Senia then asked what they were doing in Japan. Hearing that, Hyujin only replied, vacation. Senia certainly didn't believe it. The arrangement of her party members made her doubt that this was a normal vacation. She could only think he had a different purpose. Hearing that, Hyujin then asked if it meant that something related to playing would happen here. Senia did not answer his question, because according to the commandments, she was forbidden to personally interfere in playing or leak information. Therefore, she could not answer his question, but she intended to convey a special intention through the quests desired by the Guardians. Just a moment ago, many Guardians wanted to give quests, and among them, a Guardian who does not wish to publicize their name has made a sponsorship. According to their will, she, Senia, gave this quest on her behalf. The quest told them to find traces of a suspicious gate somewhere in Dotonbori, find and destroy the turtle's nest. Hearing that, Hyujin then said that this was really a personal vacation, but since they had gotten a quest, they had no choice but to give it their all and play. Hearing that, they were then dumbfounded, because Hyujin had said that this was work not a vacation. Hyujin then asked if they had to clear this up before returning to Korea. Senia confirmed that. Hyujin then said, then no problem, it was time for dinner. So he then asked them if there was anything they wanted to eat. Manhwa said she wanted to try jukatsu. Hearing that, Hyujin then said if they saw a restaurant that sold it, they would go in. Seeing the interaction between them, Senia then pondered for a moment. Player Kim Hyujin, at first glance, it might look like he was playing around with his safety in mind. But he always used everything he had to get the maximum profit possible. Unbelievable. But he even used the Guardians. Yu Hyun then whispered to him, is it okay to leave the intermediate administrator like this? Hyujin said that such a thing would not be a problem. At that time when Hyujin was on Mount Inwang, after he got the proposal from the Guardians, he then thanked all the Guardians who had given him a great honor by making an extraordinary offer. He was also very aware that the level of interest in him was more than he deserved. Despite knowing that, he had to offend and say the following. He then bowed and said, of all the offers given to him today, he did not intend to accept any of them. He did not dare to accept the offer of just one Guardian. And he did not dare to accept the offer of all of them. The only thing he could accept today was their intention to support him. All he could promise was to give his best effort, to deliver the playing that they wished to see from him. Even Senia could only be surprised at his action and thought, what did he earn just by bowing his head once? The 3,000 coins he received through the deal with her. And the good impression he gave to the Guardians who witnessed his play-in on Mount Inwang. Even the results have extended to the competition to sponsor today's quest. He then paused for a moment and thought, if all this is his main goal, do you know what kind of danger he will face? In the afternoon, they then stopped in front of a restaurant. Hyujin then asked Manhwa how about that place. Manhwa agreed. Hearing that, Hyujin then invited her to go in and check it out, but he was then surprised when he saw a group of people suddenly fleeing frantically in front of them. While looking at the cause of why they all fled, they then turned alert. Yanseo then asked, isn't that what they were looking for? A gate suddenly appeared near them. And a system notification then appeared. He had found the turtle nest gate.